back to Mrs. Kusi, please, for 5.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, Minister, as was reported in the Ottawa Citizen yesterday, you have begun a multi-billion-dollar spending review. So can you please share with the committee what is the name of the third-party organization, the consulting firm, that is helping you with this multi-billion-dollar spending review?
I have no knowledge of any third-party contractor that is assisting with this process, but I will turn to the officials in case they have knowledge.
You should have knowledge of everything, first of all. I'll start by saying that. But Mr. Matthews, briefly, please.
Just to add, from a TBS perspective, where we are, organizing and running the RGS2 initiative through the expenditure management sector, there's no contractors or companies been hired. What we cannot say is, has any department specifically hired a consulting resource to help them develop their own proposals? We would not have line of sight into that.
But again, as the Treasury Board, the overseer of all the departments regarding finances, I would expect there to be knowledge of that. So, Minister, if I were to do an OPQ, there would be nothing that would come up on a third party relative to this process outside of what Mr. Matthews has said.
Mr. Matthews' comments are ones that I support.
Okay. And if I were to do an ATIP, I wouldn't find any information currently on a third-party consulting firm.
You're welcome to file any type of report that you want, whether it's an OPQ or an ATIP. I'm telling you what I know, okay, in honesty.
I appreciate that. So you are telling me then that the Trudeau government is doing this all on its own right now. It's being completely handled by your Prime Minister and yourself as Minister of the Treasury Board.
I am telling you that the process that we are following is that I have sent a letter to each minister to provide me with details regarding how they're going to meet the targets relating to refocused government spending, including reducing the size of the public service by 5,000 through natural attrition. We are receiving those submissions now. We will review them and we will table results in the main estimates if all goes well. Okay,
thank you. So that from a government whereby the PBO says that you are $6.8 billion over your deficit, and as far as you know, the Trudeau government under your leadership, under the Prime Minister, is managing all of this. God help us all. Minister, I will go on to my next subject now, which is something that has been very dear to this committee, and that is the ArriveCAN scandal. You promised this committee several months ago, possibly a year ago now, that you would recoup the $64 million from the fraudsters and the scamsters that took money out of the pockets of Canadians. You told this committee, you told Canadians that you would recoup this money. This, of course, is a scandal that is under RCMP investigation and is house ordered for review to return the money. So my question for you today on behalf of Canadians is, how much money of the $64 million have you recovered, Minister?
The RCMP investigation is continuing, and I said when we receive the report of the RCMP, we will recoup lost monies of Canadian taxpayers.
Okay, that sounds like a zero. But I'm sure you have a process in place that you have started. What type of confirmations have you received when this process is completed of funds that you will recoup, where certain vendors perhaps have said, as soon as this process is completed, we will hand over these funds, we will return these funds? What commitments have you received in terms of funds expected to be returned back to you? What commitments have you received? A number, please.
Mr. Chair, as I mentioned, the RCMP investigation is ongoing. We have a commitment to recoup taxpayer dollars at every turn. We have accepted the recommendations of the Auditor General relating to those issues, and we will continue to ensure that we adhere to the recommendations. That's why I implemented reforms in March 2024, revised directive on conflict
sorry,
of interest,
we're past
increased
our time.
contract
Where's the money?
information,
Where's the money,
horizontal
Minister?
audit.
Please
You're
get
gonna go
Canadian
to,
As soon as we
Thank
have a
you.
I'm
report from the
sorry, we are past
RCMP,
our
we
time,
will
both
move
of
on.
you. We're going to Genuis and then finish up with Mr. Kuzmierczuk.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Minister. I was surprised to see the government vote in favor of my motion to ban double dipping. That was a motion to prevent government employees from doubling as outside contractors. Pleasantly surprised. Will the government now implement this motion and finally ban double dipping?
Thank you to my honourable colleague for bringing forward that motion. And as you know, we are continuously looking at how to inject more discipline into the system. That's why I introduced the revised directive on conflict of interest, which directly addresses the point that my honourable colleague is making, as well as the horizontal audit and
Okay, Minister. Sorry, just
decision-making.
to jump in though. My question is specific. It's about a motion that you voted for in the House of Commons, as did your colleagues. That motion wasn't to reaffirm these various other policies. It was to ban, outright and completely ban, the practice of double dipping. Is it the intention of the government to follow through on the unanimous vote of the House of Commons and ban outright double dipping, which I think you'll acknowledge goes further than these existing policies?
Well, again, thank my honourable colleague for bringing forward the motion and for voting in favour of it. We, as I said, are continually looking at how we can improve the directive on conflict of interest. We've revised it already this year, and we're looking at further ways we can strengthen the
So can I infer from that a
policy.
decision hasn't been made yet on whether to actually implement this motion? Because if you're continually looking at that, sounds like you're saying we might, but we haven't decided yet.
As I said, I'm very committed to ensuring that we have stringent rules in place relating to the directive on conflict of interest, and with other ministers, we'll continually look at how that can be strengthened and improved.
Okay, I don't think we got a clear answer, and I would have thought that you could simply affirm that you would implement the motion that you voted in favor of and the House voted unanimously in favor of. I hope we will still see a ban on double dipping, but it seems like there's not a clear commitment to do that. My next question is, the company started by Randy Boissonneau, GHI, has been suspended from getting government contracts. We think they should be banned permanently. Can you update us as to why they were suspended and whether the government is going to ban them completely?
So this would be a question for Minister Duclos at PSPC more than me, given that he has purview over government contracting. But I will say that the individual in question has, I understand, agreed to come to committee to answer questions, and I believe that question could be posed to him. In addition,
Is the individual in question Randy?
I believe that that individual will be coming to committee. And in
Okay.
terms of the banning of contracts, which was the heart of your question, I will take that question back to Minister Duclos. But
All right.
the
I would
company-
love to see Randy at committee, by the way. I have one final question I want to get in the time we have. Indigenous leaders have repeatedly told this committee that Indigenous identity fraud is rampant in government, and that the proportion of real Indigenous businesses getting contracts isn't 5%, that it's closer to 1%. So how many businesses have been denied contracts or faced consequences for Indigenous identity fraud?
Well, I would agree that identity fraud is painful and harmful. And in terms of the numbers relating to companies denied contracts because they're not on the list, I don't have that information.
If I
I'm not
could,
sure
Mr.
if you
Chair, I
do.
can give a
I want to clarify though, not because they're not on the list, because of Indigenous identity fraud. So that could be companies that misrepresented themselves in order to get onto the list, or who claim to be Indigenous businesses when they are not. We have. I think, over 1,000 businesses have been taken off that list. There may be various reasons, but one of them could be Indigenous identity fraud. So, but how many businesses have faced consequences or been denied contracts for Indigenous identity fraud?
I'll give you a partial answer, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, partial answer. ISC, the department responsible for the actual list, does pre-contract audits as well as post. Latest information I have is they have done 14 audits in terms of pre-award audits. 2 have been found non-compliant. And there are 16 other audits, post-award audits, that are underway. No results yet.
Okay, so that's not really an answer about consequences, but 2 out of 14 companies that were audited are found non-compliant. That's not as high a proportion as we're hearing from Indigenous leaders, but that's still fairly significant. 2 out of 14. Have there been any consequences for those 2?
I'm afraid that is our time.
Can we get a follow-up in writing then? Have there been any consequences for those 2? I suspect there haven't been, frankly. But
Perfect.
Thank you so much, Minister, for joining us here once again, and thank you so much for your testimony. I wanted to begin by talking about housing, big issue, obviously, in communities, in my community, and really across Canada. And we're seeing signs that the programs that we've put forward are working. You know, we're the Housing Accelerator Fund. Our community in the town of Tecumseh has availed themselves of this program. The apartment construction loan program, reducing the GST off of purpose-built rentals. And you're seeing, for example, in Windsor, you're seeing a university student housing that's being built at the University of Windsor, 400 units that are being built. You're seeing, for example, the Gateway Project, which was partnership with a private investor, private developer-led project that is creating 99 homes, units, of which about 30 are affordable in the town of Tecumseh. It's a beautiful building. And then you look at, for example, the Meadowbrook Project, which is the first public housing project built in Windsor, Essex in the last 30 years, about 145 units there, all affordable. And so we're seeing these signs of housing getting built, which is a complete reversal from when the Conservatives were in power. They didn't build a damn thing. And not only that, but they're talking about actually cutting the Housing Accelerator Fund and other such programs. And it's even to the point right now where even Conservative MPs are forbidden by their leader to talk about the Housing Accelerator Fund. I mean, this is the most important issue right now facing young people in my community and across Canada. And I just wanted to ask you, Minister, what do we have here inside this supplementary estimates that address housing directly?
Well, thank you for the question. It is concerning that members of that caucus cannot deliver support, such as funding for housing projects in their very own ridings. But in terms of the numbers, we have $135.9 million for the Canada Housing Benefit, $99.3 million for the Affordable Housing Fund, and $27.4 million for Co-op Housing Development Program. So you can see how seriously our government takes addressing the affordable housing issue, and we would very much like to see all members of the House supporting these initiatives.
Well, thank you so much for that response, Minister. I wanted to now turn to Ukraine. We had a chance to, when you were in Windsor a few months ago, we had a chance to actually meet with the Ukrainian community in Windsor, Essex, at the Polish Hall, if you recall. There are 12,000 plus Ukrainians that call Windsor, Essex home. In my community. It's big. And they've been following the situation, obviously, in Ukraine very, very closely. And they see the investments that we're making, both in terms of military support, financial support, humanitarian support. We stand shoulder to shoulder with our Ukrainian friends and here in Canada, and obviously in Ukraine and abroad. I had a chance to also meet with the Speaker of the Ukrainian Parliament, Ruslan Stefanchuk, just last week. and we talked about the importance of continuing to make investments to support Ukraine and stand in solidarity. Can you speak about some of the investments in these estimates supporting Ukraine and supporting the Canadian Armed Forces as well?
Certainly, $763 million for military aid to Ukraine, $659 million for air crew training, $561 million for the Canadian Multi-Mission Aircraft Project, $299 million for sustaining the Halifax-class frigates. These are all items that are in our supplementary estimates. And again, it is surprising when the opposition can't find it within themselves to vote in favor of supports for the Canadian Armed Forces or for Ukraine that is fighting for democracy within its own borders as well as in the world at large.
Thank you, Minister. One final question I have actually to Mr. Matthews. Peter Julian from the NDP stated on Twitter that Conservative MPs arrived drunk at the House of Commons last night. They screamed, disrupted proceedings.
Point of order here,
So that
Chair.
parliamentary
This
pages
is obviously
had to be
BS.
actually ushered out of
The lies Peter Julian tells on Twitter are frankly beneath Mr. Kuzmerichuk to repeat, but if they're not beneath him, they're certainly beneath this committee. We have a Minister of the Crown here for an hour, and this is the garbage you come up with. Like, I expect so much better of you, and I thought so much better of you.
Thanks, Mr. Let's finish up, Mr. Kuzmerichuk.
Yes, and so I just wanted to ask.
This is not
It's
on
to the point
topic,
where
Chair.
pages had
It's
to
not on
be
topic.
apparently ushered out of
This is not on
the House
topic.
of Commons, the chamber. I just wanted to ask, making sure that we have a safe, responsible workplace
And
is
I have
vital.
to
And if I can,
I heard you were
Mr.
drunk in the
Matthews,
House.
I'm-
I heard you
I'm
were drunk
sorry.
that night.
Colleagues,
That's what I heard. I don't know if it's true, but that's what I heard.
Floor. Please don't make me use what's left of my voice. That is our time for today. Unfortunately, you have used up your 5 minutes, Mr. Kuzmerichuk. Before we dismiss you, we've got about 20 seconds. I'll ask really quickly. When do we have the DRRs coming out, the departmental results? Do you have an exact date?
Well, that was a question that
I know that, but
my
do we have an
colleague
exact date?
asked, and I answered it by saying once we've tabled the public accounts, we will be tabling the
So with the
DRRs.
public accounts. And just a last question on the
And
public
possibly
account-
on the same day. We're working on that right now.
And on the public accounts, your officials last Wednesday in the Senate Finance were asked very specifically about had the final reports gone to the Auditor General and delivered very misleading response that they had. Could you respond why they would mislead the
Mr.
Senate
Chair,
Finance
I feel
and
like I need to
Canadians on that
answer
issue?
The official in question is with us at the table, and he later in that meeting clarified that during testimony he was not sure if it was the
All
final
right,
version.
he
And I've now
revised his question after being confronted by the chair. So I'm just trying to figure out why
subsequently-
misleading information was given to the Senate
So,
Finance and
if
therefore
I'm-
Canadians.
May, Mr. Chair, subsequent clarification at the table, also a follow-up with the committee. The actual version of the financial statements comes from the Receiver General, not his shop. So I think we've clarified, and we have the final version with the Auditor General now and are collaborating to finalize those public accounts.
Thank you very much. With that, we are suspending for a few minutes and bringing in our new witnesses.